Hey everybody, this is PJ Riley from Lancaster Archery. Great day in our video studio today. We got a brand new product we wanted to tell you about. This is the One Sight from Bowfinger, a brand new competition target sight. This is going to be for your compound bows from the folks at Bowfinger. They already make scopes. Now they have the sight to go with it, and this thing is awesome. So, the One Sight, that's the name of this sight here. This one has a 6-inch bar, and one of the things I like about it, ingenious, I don't know why somebody didn't think about it sooner, is the sight bar, you know, they do have your detents at the top here. This is what you're going to lock your locking knob into the detents. When you're getting the distance, you want your scope to sit from the riser. So of course you're going to lock into position there. But what the folks at Bowfinger is they have this locking screw right here. So no more fumbling to figure out how to get into that right detent. You just put this ahead of where you want your sight bar to sit. So you can imagine this is on my bow. I attach it, slide it right to that locking screw, and then I can just lock it right in place and I am set. Kind of ingenious there. I can put that wherever I want. So this does have all of your adjustments. We'll go through this sight, all the features of it, but it does have all the adjustments, you know, for your second axis. Of course, you want to start adjusting your second axis by making sure that your elevation bar is perfectly level. So you're going to have your 2 screws right here. That's going to allow you to get that elevation bar correct, so that when you run your scope up and down, you know it's moving vertically. It's not at an angle. And that affects your second axis. So you start right there with your adjustment. That's your second axis first adjustment. So then, of course, you are going to adjust the second axis of your scope. Second axis affects the way the scope sits this way. It's pitching it up and down. And so right here, you are going to have your 2 screws. Loosen both of those and you'll be able to pivot this bar so that your scope goes up or down to get the second axis. Then third axis. Of course, third axis is the swinging door. That's important for when you're shooting up and down hills. You're going to have your third axis adjustments right here. 2 of them. Again, you loosen those and then you're going to adjust the scope position like a swinging door. Scope's going to sit here, you're going to adjust it this way. So all the adjustments that you want to be able to get your scope perfectly level, the One Sight does have those. Now, moving on, let's talk about the controls here. So this does have, for your elevation, it does have micro adjust click. And I'm going to have a locking screw right here first of all. I'm going to loosen that, and then your clicks. You can hear those, and they are precise clicks. What Bowfinger says is that each click is 2/1000ths of an inch. So you're talking about getting micro adjustments in there. What I'll tell you, if you can zoom in on this, the sight tape that I have on here, this is the number 17 sight tape, so this is in the middle. And you can see the yardage increments. What I can tell you is that on this sight tape, in between each yardage position, I'm able to get 10 clicks between the yardages. You can see how tight they are. That's micro adjustments that you can do with the click here. 10 clicks in between the adjustments on this sight tape. So that's what we really like, to make sure that you can get your sight precisely where you want it when you're out there on the range. Now, in addition to the click, you're also going to have a speed adjustment. You can see this spring right here, so I would just press that in and then I can slide the sight freely. Once I let out, it locks into place. You can see that's locked. Again, press in, lift up, locked into place. So that's just great, you know, especially like field archery. you might go from the short 11-yard target and your next one might be 80 yards. So rather than sit there and have to crank all the way from 11 down to 80, you just got the speed adjustment where you can slide it fast. That's always a great option to have that on your sight. And then of course, once you have everything where you want it, you just lock that down and now nothing's going to move. So we do have the same click for your windage. This is your locking knob right here. I just loosen that. Same thing. Micro click. You know, I'm not going to be moving this as much as I will the elevation. Once you get that set right, you're just going to lock it into place. But just super precise movements. And what I'll tell you, I'm so appreciative of Bowfinger for putting in something for idiots like me. Because no matter how many times I adjust the windage on a sight, I forget which way I'm supposed to turn it to get it to go left and right. And when you're making micro adjustments, that's something, it's important to know which way it moves, because if you just make 1 or 2 clicks, how do I know which way it went? I can't really see it. So what I always end up having to do is do a bunch of clicks so I can see where it's going, and then I can back it up and I know how to make my clicks. But Bowfinger took the guesswork out. Always wondered why more didn't do this. And on the inside here you can see R and L with different arrow positions. So they tell you right on the knob which way to turn to get the sight to move the way you want it. Again, maybe I'm the only one who needs that, but I find I forget every time I want to move give a couple clicks, I always forget. Can't forget with the Bowfinger. Sight tapes. You are going to see there are positions for 2 of them. You've got one on this side with an indicator, and you've got one on this side with an indicator. In the pack, what I'll tell you is you are going to get 15 metal sight tapes. They're double-sided, so you're going to get 30 sight tapes. That will allow, you usually within there you're going to get something that's pretty close, if not exactly close. Of course, then you can always go to any of the programs and make your own sight tape, which would be a sticker. And you do have a blank one here. You can just mount your sticker sight tape onto this if you want. It's 2-sided as well. So there's options for whatever you want to do. And so having the dual sight tapes, one on each side, that'll allow you, if you're running 2 different arrow setups, you don't have to completely strip everything. You can just go from one side to the other. Today I'm going to use the sight tape on this side. Today I'm going to use the sight tape on this side, depending on what you're shooting. Or I know now it's becoming popular in 3D archery, especially in the known divisions, there are folks who are shooting 2 different arrows. They're shooting their large diameter when the target is open. When they have a free shot at that 12 ring, they'll use their large diameter arrows. Then when things get tight, when there's a bunch of arrows, they'll run a skinny micro diameter. So you folks definitely need to run 2 sight tapes depending on which one you're shooting in one particular tournament. Now you've got a place to put your sight tapes for your skinny arrows and for your fat arrows. All right, mounting your scope to the sight. So remember, this is a target sight. You're going to have to get a scope to put on it, or some type of aperture you're going to have to mount on this. It is just the sight itself. So I grabbed a Bowfinger scope just to show the attachments on here, but it does have a 5/16 square. That's the end here. And a lot of the scopes, that's the size that they use. So to connect it, I would just take this screw out. You do get the scope screw, which is always nice. So this is what you would use to mount the scope to your sight. And you can see on my Bowfinger scope, you can see right there, I have that square. So that is going to be what I'm going to match up. This is a right-handed sight. So that's going to be what I match up right in there. You can see how tight that fits. Mount my screw through here. All right, so just going to mount my scope right here. Get that tight. Now I've got that on there. You can see all my adjustments up and down with the scope in place. But the reason I wanted to put that on is I wanted to show you quick disconnect. So it's not, you don't always want to leave your scope on for transport. You're putting it in a case or something. You want to protect that scope. So, but then when you get to a tournament, how do you get your scope back on and make sure it's always in the right place? Well, right here, you can see I've got this bracket here. There's a pin. I'll take it off and show you. But once I get my scope positioned exactly where I want it, this slides back and forth. This is going to be my, my reference point. Once I have this seated up against the sight block itself, then I know my sight is where I want it and everything's locked into place. But if I want to take it off, I've got this screw up on top. Loosen that, and now I can take my scope off. This is the pin that I was talking about. And this is the receiver that it goes into. So I've got, these parts in my bow case, put that in, and you can see that pin. So my scope can go anywhere, but I want to get that pin right in there, and now I lock it back down. And I know everything went right back to where it was when I took it apart. That's a super handy feature. The sight itself, it does come with its own scope barrel. If you have an aftermarket one that's round, it's going to have to be the round style. There's some that are hexagons in different shapes. But you can take an aftermarket round barrel, if you have one, to mount in there as well. Going back to the sight tapes for a second, I wanted to make sure to point out that you can see these sight tapes, they are angled back towards you. On a lot of sights, it's just perfectly flat. So the sight tapes sit this way, which means if you want to be able to look at the sight tape, you have to turn the whole bow sideways to be able to look at it. But by angling the sight tapes back towards the archer, I can mostly see it from my position behind the bow, but at the very minimum, just a slight turn like that, and I can see, if I'm double checking, I'm on the line, I'm like, oh, did I set my sight right? I can just quick check like that. I don't have to turn it perfectly sideways to see it. So again, just another shooter-oriented feature to angle those sight tapes back towards the archer. We were talking about the micro clicks here, 0.02 of an inch. So internally what we have is there are 2 ball bearings in the elevation and in the windage. That's what gives you that precision per click. It's also what takes out some of the, what I'll call play. Sometimes you get in between clicks and there's some movement that you can have in the control knob that you don't necessarily want. You want these things to be precise. By having 2 ball bearings, that locks your control knob in 2 positions, just a more secure position. Again, you're not going to notice that. That's internally, but I've taken this apart and there are 2 ball bearings on the elevation and the windage. Just some more adjustments, every archer is different, how you like the sight to sit. It's always nice to have multiple positions where you can mount the bar, if you want to have it down low, to have your scope because, the scope sits up high for you, or if you want to bring the sight bar up and try and maximize your distance to be able to bring this scope down, shooting out long distance. However you want to set your sight bar to get your elevation where you want it, you can do. You've got multiple mounting options. And of course, corresponding with that, you are able to move the sight tape up or down depending on where you need it to sit. Same thing for your indicators. You can see all these holes where I can move that indicator to make sure I can get it on the distances I need it to be. All right, so another feature of the One Sight. We talked about the locks here for elevation and windage. So what these are is these are considered slide locks. What makes these locks unique from other types of locks are when this is locked down, you can see I can still turn this, my elevation knob, but if you're noticing, it's hard to see, my sight actually isn't moving at all. In other words, when I have this locked down, even if I hit these, the knob up here, the sight is not going to move. So for security, that's just great. You know that once you have that locked into place, no matter what happens, that scope is not going to move. With the locks that Bowfinger uses on here, it really locks them into place. They're called slide locks, as opposed to just locking the threads in place, which those can move a little bit. This one will not move when the lock is in place. One thing I do like about the Bowfinger sight tapes, I'll pick a big one here, is, you can see bright white. Those are my even numbers in terms of, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. But then they do give you a little bit of a shaded number for the 5-yard increments as well, 25, 35, 45. So again, me, not always paying attention. Sometimes I will miss I'll get lost when I'm moving my sight scale up and down and miss those 5-yard increments because they're not always marked. Oftentimes on sight tapes, you're just going to see 20, 30, 40, 50. So having the 5-yard increments, that just makes it easier for me to make sure that I'm on the right number when I'm adjusting my sight. So one feature that Bowfinger definitely stresses about this sight is that at all the high stress areas, we hear a lot about stainless steel. But what Bowfinger has found is that that's not necessarily the strongest. So at all the high stress points, they use an alloy steel, which they say is stronger than stainless. Again, at all the high stress points, so that, there's a lot of vibration that comes into the sight. If you've ever seen super high speed camera footage of a compound bow at shot, this thing vibrates a lot. You don't see it with the naked eye, but trust me, it does. So you want to have the strongest steel at all those high stress areas in this sight to make sure nothing moves, nothing breaks. That alloy steel helps with that. All right, so your Bowfinger One Sight is going to come in this plastic case with the egg carton foam in there. That's going to keep your sight protected. It also comes with this that's going to double as a great sight cover. Once your scope is mounted on your bow, slide that bag right over top of it. You got it in there. Or if you detach your sight, you can put it in this bag. Just an extra bag that comes with it. And of course, all your sight tapes and your mounting bolts. But that is the Bowfinger One Sight. Great new target sight from the folks at Bowfinger. Glad to see this out there with all this high precision. You can never get enough of that in the target world. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos like it, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to click that bell to get notifications whenever we put out new videos. And as always, if you have any questions, you can visit us at LancasterArchery.com.